Do more damage and get good. How many times have you heard this and thought, man, what an ass? But was that ass wrong then? No ass is wrong, butts are the best. However, you already know you have to be better. That's the whole point. Someone telling you to get good essentially means, I can do it, no idea how though, but you should do it too. Let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. A plus 20 key in Season 3 is way easier than a 20 key in the past. It's not about the actual number of a key, but most about your capability as a player. It might as well be a plus 18 or a plus 25. A plus 20 is usually when you start to see that things are slightly different now. Stuff that deals a lot of damage can likely kill you in a 20. You didn't used to kick that cast before, but now if you don't, your healer yells at you. As somebody that has been increasing their key level each season, I know what it's like to have that feeling, wait, I just did this 1 key lower, so why is it so hard now? It's not a magical increase in damage from a 19 to a 20. It's not that from a 20 to a 21. Again, it doesn't matter at what key level it happens. Maybe you didn't realize because your healer was topping you off instantly, but 1 key higher, everything hurts slightly more. So maybe this time the healer was 1 or 2 seconds slower in dispelling or healing or something. And you may have taken that arcane blast to the face before, but now you had that and a frostbolt at the same time and died. Which is weird because those casts didn't used to kill you before. So why now? Why do these things matter all of a sudden and not before? One word, friend. Scaling. Whether it is keys or raids or leveling, once you have enough power and you destroy stuff, you stop worrying about how dangerous certain mechanics are. For keys, it's the other way around. At the beginning of a season, you usually start low on a plus 2 or plus 7. The way scaling works is not linear as you might expect. A plus 5 dungeon isn't just as much harder than a plus 4 as a plus 22 is compared to a plus 21. Each key level, mobs, health and damage increase by a coefficient, and the higher you go in keys, the coefficient gets higher instead of remaining constant until it reaches critical mass, or better known as, fuck, never died to that before. I've been using examples of mechanics that killed you, but of course, when you go high enough in a key, you need more than just to survive. This season, however, it's all about surviving since our damage is so bonkers compared to the content, which makes it even more painfully obvious when you are taking more damage than you should. So how do you do it? How do you get better? How can you master doing any key over 20? Or in a more pragmatic sense, how do you get better at doing Mythic Plus keys? Interrupts, kicks, and stops is basically what I have been talking about so far. It's a bit hard to know which spells you need to kick all the time until you go in and do it or have someone else tell you. For instance, in Everbloom, before Archmage Soul, the game makes it pretty obvious you want to kick Pyroblasts. There couldn't be a more obvious WoW spell to kick than Pyroblast unless it was named killing a player in 5, 4, 3. But the higher you go in a key, especially on fortified weeks where the casts hit even harder, you will really want to kick Arcane Blast. And going even higher, you will want to kick Frostbolts as well if you pull all of this trash into one pull. In low keys, you might not care about these last 2 spells as much because they are just whatever. But once again, scaling. Since we are on the topic of Everbloom, the Council boss has 2 very obvious kicks you want. The Toxic AoE stun everyone spell and Revitalize, the heal the boss spell. But once you get into tyrannical 20s and higher, you really want to kick as many of the others as well. This is when it becomes very important to talk with your party and assign interrupt. You get Toxic, I get Revitalize, and everyone else kicks all the other spells. Every cast that goes through will chunk somebody for quite a bit of damage, eventually overwhelming your healer and you dying. This is when the, oh, that never killed me before thing happens. It might not be a missed Arcane Blast kick, but it could be that each filler cast on the Council boss goes through, chips a bit away from your healer, even assuming nobody stays in poison, gets hit by poison, or leaves the poison under the boss happens. On top of the other boss constantly channeling an AoE unavoidable damage wave on the whole group. This is mostly unintuitive if you don't play the healer on the fight. If you do, you know when things hurt, or you find out. And that takes us to the next bit. Our Patreon platform, which is making this video possible and many others on our channel as well. If you do decide to support our content, you will be actively contributing to keeping the lights up here on MarcelianOnline and making sure that we can put out more and more awesome videos. Check the link down in the description, check it out, and you will also have access to a lot of goodies like customizable 4K wallpapers with your character's transmog. Pretty dope. I have one as well, and it's kick-ass whenever I pop up my PC and log in into the game. That and many others like bloopers and early access videos are what is part of our Patreon program. We would appreciate your support. Thank you very much. And now let's actually go back to defensives. Still in Everbloom, because there's a reason why this is probably the hardest dungeon this season, or 10 reasons, Archmage Soul is probably the hardest boss to do in the entire Mythic dungeon pool, at least for people currently residing at a crossroads between pushing a key just above their current level and where they are now. The Cinderbolt mechanic actually becomes brutal on tyrannical weeks above 20 and even lethal. Cinderbolt also happens very often, random, and as a mix of mechanics with the cold orbs or the arcane vortex thingy. With a good healer, if nothing goes wrong, you might be fine, but if the bad RNG rolls and you get one too many Cinderbolts on your face, touch, or get pulled into a fire puddle, you die. Defensives here are a must. It's also decently important to know if your healer can handle a Cinderbolt phase or you need to pop a defensive. You will notice the same on the last boss here with Colossus Smash when the ad is out. The ad being out deals damage to everyone, and add the smash on top of it and you have a wipe potential ready to happen. These types of mechanics require you to rotate defensives. Not all specs have the luxury to do that, but most specs do. Rogues can and should rotate Feint. Rogues can actually use Feint on the smashes without the ad and still have it for when it matters, especially if you are an outlaw. Red Paladins can use Shield of Vengeance on one, Divine Protection on another. Druids can alternate between a defensive and shifting into Bear for the moment the ability hits. Warriors can use Spell Reflect for the magical damage reduction it offers. If you have a short defensive, rotating it is a must. And this isn't the only boss. The second boss in Galakrond requires the same thing when the debuff mechanic happens. This is especially true if you are the person with the debuff, since you already cannot be in the zone that offers damage reduction. Won't list them all, but you understand the concept, I hope. A little bit more niche, but still makes a load of difference, especially if you play with a pug healer. Once you know the mechanics are dangerous and require your defensives, you also know what it means to either not have a defensive for an incoming mechanic or to not be healthy. If the healer cannot keep you up, regardless of an incoming mechanic, help the healer out. Use a healing potion, personal heal, or simply cast your surges as a shaman, regrowths as a druid, flash of light as a paladin. This has a strong value in Waker's Manor on the Witch's boss. The Jagged Nettles will deal incredible damage to you and won't go away unless you're healed past 90% of your HP. Most of the time the healer has to take care of that, but if you're a hunter and have Exhilaration up, use it here. Pop Impending Victory as a warrior, or a Shield Absorb on specs that have it. When a mechanic happens where your healer needs to keep you healthy and they struggle, or even if they don't, helping them through it might seem like not your job, but by doing so you ensure a few things. 1. The healer doesn't run out of mana by the time the boss dies, which can happen. 2. The healer isn't so stressed that they either fail the mechanic or focus so much on it they fail elsewhere. Remember, healers are human too. Use Blessing of Protection on target stunned by the tree boss in Waycrest. It might not be a heal, but it's definitely helping the healer out not have to heal through the mechanic. There are instances of these things happening where you could help, and if you can, you should. That will make you a better DPS. How many times have you died and yelled at your group, "Do the affix"? Stuff like Incorporeal has been iterated upon where now every class can handle it, so that once again your healer doesn't have to do the job of your entire party. Warriors can shatter it, shamans can hex it, druids can hibernate, rogues can blind, and so on. Obviously, this isn't the only affix. If you play Shadow Priest, you can still use Mass Dispel on bursting. If you are a Death Knight, you can pop Death's Advance and clear potential dangerous storming tornadoes. As a monk, you can use Ring of Peace to push mobs out of Sanguine. You want to be a better DPS? There is more to your role than just pumping out numbers. Timing your cooldowns comes with practice, but we assume you had a bunch climbing your way to 20s and higher. I know it's dope to have Giga overall and be that red paladin on the meters, but if there's a dangerous pack coming after the small one you are already in, holding your cooldowns and using them on that pack is better. When running keys with a consistent decent group, timing cooldowns will also give you the highest overall since the tank will know and pull accordingly. But until then, or if pugging, making sure that things that need to die quick is more important. Sure, teamwork is nice and all, but we all have been there in pugs where people are just YOLOing the key. And if there's something you can do to more increase the success chance of your group, why wouldn't you do it? And that applies to Dispels. This could have been bashed together with the affix or cooldown or all of the previous sections since it all comes down to using your utility right. However, due to the nature of certain debuffs and keys and how crucial they are, having its own category is needed. The infected thorn in Waycrest is a brutal disease, and if your class can handle it, make sure the talent is selected and you can dispel it. Shamans can talent into poison cleansing totem. This will not only cleanse multiple poisons per use, but also help with afflicted affixes. Druids as well. I can't tell you how often I did Algathar Academy in Season 1 with bears that refused to talent into their poison dispel and die to the tree boss and blame the healer. Don't be that guy. This applies to any talent change you can make to match a particular dungeon's mechanic pool or utility requirements. It can even be tailored to your party composition. As an example, if you are playing a warrior where your group has a lot of short cooldown AoE stuns like shamans and demon hunters, maybe even other warriors, and you have a choice between shockwave and intimidating shout, take shout and use the shockwave talent to get more dragon's roar damage. More damage is great, right? Plus, the shockwave addition might be useless if your stun isn't needed, while your group could use a fear that won't build towards the diminishing returns mobs will eventually have. I'm using warrior as an example since it's simple to understand, but if you play a warrior, you will likely have both shout and shockwave in most of your keys anyway, regardless. Doing big AoE DPS and having a sweet overall damage dealt at the end of a key might make you excited and pumped, but if the key was not done in time because you wiped on a pack with an abomination on Bolster Week, your Giga DPS means nothing. Prioritizing targets is important, and it's important every time because not all mobs are created equal. To use the Everbloom example, abominations are by far the most dangerous mobs in the first half of the dungeon. If you have a class that deals constant AoE, make sure you have your abomination in your sights. If you play an outlaw, you can easily cleave with Blade Flurry off of an abomination, while making sure the most damage goes on it. Enhancement can use all of its lava lashes on that one target. Arms warriors can sweeping strikes while always being on the most important target. An extreme example would be Bolstering Week, maybe even on Fortified, where those abominations are so hard to deal with that you either don't pull them or make smaller pulls, increasing the overall time you spend in the dungeon, which makes it harder to time it. If you are playing a balanced druid, it will be super tempting to spend all of your astral power on Starfall for that uncapped AoE, but using Star Surges on the abomination can drastically improve the success of your key. This is true for Waycrest Manor as well with the Witches, Blackrook Hold with those elite lieutenants. Knowing if your class can funnel damage into a dangerous mob can make or break a key, even if the overall DPS would be slightly lower. Have you gone into a key and heard a player say, "When do you want Bloodlust?" Likely so, but what happens when someone answers wrong? You could waste a lot of potential damage and time, so knowing when to Bloodlust is important. Take Galakrond's Fall for instance. Whether it is tyrannical or fortified, ideally you want Bloodlust on the second boss, which means if the key is high enough, you can squeeze in a Bloodlust at the beginning before you reach the second boss. By doing that, you would naturally take advantage of the early lust on the first pool of the dungeon to bump your damage as much as possible and win some time. If you cannot skip the first packs, pull one or two more, pop lust, and go nuts. If you can skip the first pack, you can take the one next to the boss with the boss and Bloodlust. As a DPS, you want to know these timings to also match them with your cooldowns for maximum gain. These are the times when you do want to focus on doing as much damage as possible. Of course, these big pulls with Bloodlust will assume they are more dangerous, emphasizing even more the importance of your kicks, stops, defensives, and dispels, all that we talked so far in the video. Be the one. No, not Neo, but the person to always step up. How many Dawn of the Infinites have you done where someone said, "Who can do the orbs?" Don't wait for someone else, especially a pug, to do it, if you can, assuming you know how to do it. But knowing comes with doing, so the circle becomes complete. Be the person to take the extra responsibility at all times, whether it is a mechanic, a dispel, an interrupt, or crowd control assignment. This will first of all make you desirable in a group, and you can build to a point where people want to play with you enough to make a stable group, and boom, you don't need to pug anymore. And second, you become a better player. Learning and being able to do more is always beneficial, and you won't have to do it all the time anyway. But once you adapt this mindset, all of the mechanics become trivial and you grow as a player, where issues that stop other DPSs to push keys are no longer issues for you, and that's how you do become better. Even by watching this video, take 5 more tips to improve as a DPS, even outside pushing mythic keys. Maybe you know them, or maybe there is one that you missed, and maybe that's worth watching a quick video about it.